shows at all venues for one low price.
It was an untested model for us and was really successful. The average person doesn't have like $300 to pay. And really, like, by rights, every pass should cost probably $250. Like, that's the actual cost of it. The sponsorship that we get helps offset that. But everyone has $50 to invest in 5 days worth of entertainment. I think we worked it out. It was like 38 cents a band. It's cheap, right? It's really cheap. It was definitely helpful to introduce it, give people something that they can afford and go and see, make the festival a real festival where there's this circulation vibe going on.
And the audience really did come out in full force. The Pop Explosion was a huge success in 2010, with many venues reaching capacity by 10 p.m. over the weekend. Johnny hopes to have more venues on board in the future, but also wants to increase programming for people who may not have a wristband.
I'd like to increase the free side of things. I think that we had great support for a lot of the free events that we were doing. It makes it more accessible for fans that may not have the money or the time to go out, or they're not old enough to go to the bars. This year was just over 17,000 people attending, which is huge. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing. I think if we did more free programming, maybe we could see the 25,000 mark. But I don't know. The festival is so great right now. All we want to do is just add another coat of varnish or, like spray some perfume on it to make it that much better. It's not broken now. We don't need to fix anything.
The festival may be more stable than ever, but there are still challenges Johnny must face. Halifax is not on a typical tour circuit. It's quite a distance from Toronto, New York, and Montreal, so convincing bands to make the trek east can be a difficult task. Not only that, but affording the bands the audience wants to see can be quite a challenge.
Talent prices have gone through the roof with the advent of kind of immediate media, like instant media and instant buzz. Bands are just getting more and more expensive. And it's not to say that they're not worth it. It's just that we can't afford to pay $40,000 for a band that the fans want to see. Unfortunately, it's just the case. We really focus on new, emerging, what's big before it's big. That's our focus, because we can't really afford it when it's at its peak.
The other long-running challenge has been gaining funding from the provincial and municipal governments. While the relationship between the Pop Explosion and the government was rocky at first, huge strides have been made to create a great relationship between the two.
We didn't get any money from the province for the first few years, and I remember we got a feature in Vanity Fair about how Halifax was the new Seattle and the biggest thing. And it was like, an 8-page feature on Halifax, which if you bought the advertising would probably have been something like $3 million in advertising for Halifax. And the festival never got any support from the province. It was pretty tough at the get-going.
I think a few years ago there was a challenge with the city where we were denied funding, and they have since reconsidered in a major way and have been very supportive. And the province too. I mean, we do get operating funding from the province of Nova Scotia and project funding. We've seen significant amounts of support from all levels of government.
We had a 9-month media campaign to shame the city into funding us. And now they love us. Like, I'm saying all that, but the city's done a lot of work. It's been 4 years since that happened. And now we have the civic events people are much better organized. They have some new people in there who really get stuff. They funded Hopscotch, which is awesome, the hip hop festival, and they funded the M-Fest that Johnny's putting together for the summer. They gave it some startup investment because they recognize that's valuable. So I think we have played a role as an organization and as a community of people who love music and love Halifax in making the city fund cooler stuff.
The Pop Explosion means a lot to the community, as well as local bands who see the festival as a benchmark for their career.
Pop Explosion was the event that we played. I mean, when I was playing in a punk rock band, we didn't go to the East Coast Music Awards.
We get applications saying we have to play the Pop Explosion so that we can check it off the list so we can say we played the Pop Explosion.
Many bands have had big opportunities come from playing a Pop Explosion showcase. Johnny has seen this trend continue through the most recent festival.
Bands were booked at other events, Pop Montreal, Sled Island Festival, North by Northeast. So we have seen a lot of that stuff happen. Signings, there's not a lot of record signings that happen these days. But I think if you dig through the number of bands, the success stories come from building a fan base in a new market, getting media reviews. We had media people come from all over the U.S. And some from Europe as well. So media reviews, kind of creating buzz over bands that may not have had it before.
Way notes that the festival not only creates job opportunities and connections for musicians, it also creates a sense of loyalty for artists like Joel Plaskett.
We booked Joel to do an acoustic show. He's our big local act. It's a couple of years ago, and we're thinking, okay, Joel's going to play. That's great. He confirmed. He's on tour opening for the Tragically Hip in Texas. He has flown on his own dime back to Halifax while Dave and Chris drive the truck to the next gig. He comes back, he plays St. Matthew's Church acoustic, leaves that night, goes back to Texas, because he felt like he owed it to the festival because it had done so much for him. I was flabbergasted. Like the feeling of responsibility to Joel, to his fans, to people in the community, when to enable that kind of thing to happen. It's a real responsibility. It's way more than just getting people drunk and having a good time.
There's a reason that I love this town.
The festival means more to the fans than just getting drunk and having a good time as well. For Newfoundlander Alison Marsh, the Halifax Pop Explosion was her introduction to the city she now calls home.
I planned a trip coming down when I didn't live here to go to Pop Explosion. So the first show that I ever went to in Halifax was the HPX show that had Ron Sexsmith and Winter Sleep and John Epworth. It was a really amazing show. I really fell in love with Halifax because of that weekend and how amazing all the bands were and just such the experience that it was. It was really awesome. Then I moved here, and the next year I started volunteering for it.
Volunteers are an important part of the festival, and the Halifax Pop Explosion could not survive without them. They do everything from stage managing, to providing bands a place to sleep, to greeting people at the doors to each venue. Alison has filled many roles in her time with the festival, taking on stage managing, office work, airport pickups, as well as being the billeting coordinator, all in 1 year.
Volunteering for Pop Explosion is definitely hard work, but it's really gratifying. I don't know how I managed to get through all those days, but it was just like the best time. And even though I know that it's going to be like that again every year, it just still makes me want to go back because there's just this rush and this excitement and this shared joy that all these people have coming together. And it's just so much, it's so amazing. I mean, even this year, I couldn't count the number of Red Bull I had to just get through the few days, but it was totally worth it. Like, you know, the next week's going to be a write-off and you're going to sleep and you're not going to see anyone because you have to recover, but it's worth every minute of it.
Volunteers have the opportunity to interact with bands, check out shows, and forge friendships. Yip Lutz was visiting Halifax from the Netherlands when he volunteered for the festival in 2005.
You meet a lot of people from the city. My first ever Halloween party was in Halifax, and I got invited because of this girl I was doing volunteering with. So that's why, to me, Halifax Pop Explosion was really beneficial in my experience when I moved to Halifax. One of my good friends, she also came to visit me in Amsterdam, which is really cool. And later on, when I moved to Toronto, I saw Leah there as well.
Volunteers, fans, bands, the Pop Explosion is all about giving people a memorable experience.
We exist entirely for the bands and the fans that attend and perform. That's it. We don't exist to sell tickets. We don't exist to make money. We don't exist to kind of fit any kind of motive other than providing an amazing experience, a true experience to people who are truly fans of music, and kind of showcasing Halifax as an amazing place to come and perform, to come and visit and see music.
With nearly 20 years under its belt, the Halifax Pop Explosion has established itself as a cultural landmark. To learn more about the festival and upcoming events, check out halifaxpopexplosion.com. While there, you'll also find all sorts of goodies, like photos and videos from past festivals. While it may be the bands that draw people in year after year, it's the personal experiences that leave the biggest impressions. Founder Peter Rowan is fond of the relationships he formed through the festival.
I'm very, very fond of hotboxing the bathroom of the Double Deuce with the guys from Red Cross. I think probably, honestly, my best Halifax Pop memory is like 10 years after, when Angie and I hadn't spoken for like 10 years because the festival destroyed our relationship. We got back together and hung out, and it was one of the best things ever to realize that this person that we had shared so much, and we still had that incredible fondness and affection for each other, and that the minutiae of the festival, which dragged us all down, wasn't bigger than the fact that Angie is one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and we were able to reconnect.
For former executive director Wayne Mason, the shared experiences are most memorable.
I think any show where the emotion was running so high that people were transported is a memory that's got to be remembered. The one that, like, the hair's already standing up in my arms, I've even started telling the story, is Josh Ritter at St. Matthew's Church says to the sound guy, why don't we turn the lights off and see how this goes? And I know what it sounds like for 700 people to be holding their breath while a guy plays a guitar in the dark, totally pitch black. And he plays that song about, let's go down the river till we find a place where people haven't ruined everything.
Go down to the river, into the river we dive. Oh.
And like the lights come back on and people, including myself and Steve Lutwick, we're all crying, you know, like everybody's crying. It was beautiful. And that's what makes the festival awesome, is we deliver those moments over and over again, multiple times a night for 5 days. You move people somewhere.
The passion and excitement of the fans is what has made the biggest impact for Executive Director Johnny Stevens.
The best moment for me this year, I mean, there was like a euphoria this year that I've never really felt before, where people were just out in droves, enjoying themselves, having such a good time. And it's special. Like, I don't take that for granted, you know, that means something to me personally, to be involved with something that people care so much about. So kind of experiencing that euphoria and you know, working with the volunteers and meeting the audience members was like it was the best 5 days of my entire life to date. And I think on Saturday night I was like, I could do this for another 5 days. Like, we need to, you know, how can we keep this going? Because it was just so amazing. But that's the Pop Explosion, man. You know, 5 days of bliss, and then you wait 360 days until the next one.